Did you have an overall vision of where this was going to be? I know you're going to ask me questions, but an initial vision of where this was going to end up?
No,
or
not
just
at all.
you got to a certain point and you go, okay, what's next then?
That one.
That one.
That one.
That option, yeah.
Yeah,
So you'd like to say, no, I went in year 15, I was going to get into podcasting or whatever it was. How many years
we made
is
the
it now?
first video in 13.
13.
So 12 years ago in July.
Yeah.
The first video. So, but no, I've always been the class clown, and I've always enjoyed making people laugh. It started with my mom, and my grandmother, even amongst all my cousins, and then in class, and then my dad had me in FFA. I'm a big fan and supporter of the FFA. It really kind of got me out of my shell even more than I already was. And then, obviously passionate about rodeo and ranching, and so that was in my foundation. And then when the internet kind of became an option, we just started in 13 and never really looked back.
What a game changer, this whole thing. And even now the TikTok people, selling stuff. I have a really good friend that has a thing on TikTok, and it's called Wealth Mindset. And what he's got is he's got a group of people that have now bought into his philosophy on how to sell on TikTok and how to, create those views. He'll say some things that are maybe controversial from time to time. He's politically on the right side of the spectrum. So
what's his name?
Randy Hedge.
Okay.
And so he wears cowboy hat, but, he's in Arkansas, so he's got that kind of good old, he just, says it like it is.
What kind of cowboy hat does he wear?
Well, of course. He wears if it's not an American, it's not, it's
what are we doing?
un-American.
It's not an American hat. It's un-American. Right.
So, I say that with tongue in cheek. So
this internet deal is just, and it's ever changing. I have noticed, though, over the last few months, I've began to realize, which I really enjoy this part of it. It really is an encouragement more than a challenge, but how much more competition there is in the Western industry. Because 12 years ago when I started, there was hardly anybody that nobody else was making videos.
Yeah.
And so for me, there was a time past that first video got my very first on YouTube. Got like 30,000 views, which even on YouTube is, in today's time, that's a decent amount of views for long form on YouTube.
Sure.
But back then it was a crazy number. Regardless, there was nobody else. There might have been some videos pop up, but there were zero people consistently making content. With the exception of maybe Fallon Taylor was either before or shortly after that, and there's Earl Dibbles Jr. type, Granger Smith. But regardless, now you fast forward to today, and I can't keep up with the podcasts and our podcast alone.
No,
much less vlogging, and there's so many ranchers, and it's great. There's rodeo cowboys finally that are catching on and vlogging their trips, and there's creators everywhere, which is exactly what we need. There's plenty of room.
Competition makes us all better.
Right.
I have a saying that there's two things that are very deadly, and one of them is cancer, and the other one is complacency. And so if you get complacent, somebody will steal your lunch money.
Yes.
So you can't get complacent.
If I'm not putting out a good video, then it doesn't deserve to get views anyway.
Yeah.
I do have, a very small core audience of, top fan group of loyal that they'll watch it. I Can Do No Wrong, but that's a small, it's like my mom, my aunt, and then 6 other people.
Well, I should be in that group.
There you are.
I try to, but I can't, I'm not a consumer of a lot of social media. I can only, I can't watch too much.
Yeah, you told me once, run social media, don't let it run you.
Yeah. I don't want to let it can take control over my life where I'm just married to my phone. I got to keep looking at it. It annoys me, people that, every time that dings like Pavlov's dog, you go, oh, I got to check that. It's like, you don't have to check it. It's not, it'll be there.
Yeah.
And I'm really at the point now where I'm not even taking phone calls.
Dang.
I don't take phone calls because unless I, can read it and go, okay, that's so-and-so and I need to talk to you. But, voicemail is very inefficient, and with the amount of spam calls and things you get these days,
it is crazy.
yeah,
how
I
many
just have to
spam
like
calls.
delete.
There's one. So I get these texts that I can't figure out. Like some spam calls are easy. It's just like they're trying to sell you something. They're very upfront. Like, hey, here's some health insurance. But I get these random texts. Hi, it's me, Alice. Is dinner plans still on?
I get that. I get that same thing. I don't know where it come from.
But what's crazy is like I'll go along with it.
Yeah.
Like I'll say something like, yes,
Still
they
good.
are. And
Yeah.
they'll be like, this isn't Terry or whatever. And I'm just like, no. And I don't understand what their angle is. Cause I will sometimes say, would you like my credit card info? And they won't take the bait. I'm not sure what that scam is all about.
I've done that too. When the scammers start calling, the phone all the time, I'd pick it up and they'd start giving me a round. Hey, well, tell me a little bit more, and then they'd ramble on. What? Can you do me a favor? Can I call you back? What time do you guys eat dinner?
Yeah.
I'll call you back during dinner. How's that?
Right. Exactly.
It's like, I just, But then I got where I didn't want to waste time on them.
Right.
Can't waste my time on them.
So we have in the house Mr. Keith Mundee. He is the operator. What would be your official title at American Hat? President of the American Hat Co. right out of Bowie, Texas. And I've been wearing an American forever, but we've been on the same team for probably 9 years.
No longer than that. As long as I've been there, I'm going to start July. I'm going to start my 16th year.
Wow.
And so I remember Tuff Cooper was the one who first put you on my radar, and that's when you were wearing the irrigation boots and the cutoff vest.
I think that was 14, maybe.
Maybe. And so I think I came to American in 11.
Mm.
And so pretty much most of my time at American, I remember Keith Maddox in the beginning was like, I don't get this deal. I'm not sure what's that all about? What's that? I don't get it. And I said, just trust me. This is because I was trying to reach the youth. And obviously they were, if you were in the know and you knew who Dale Brisby was, then you were in the know. If you didn't know, then you were that other guy. And so I can remember telling Keith, that ain't for you. Don't worry about it. It ain't for you. And it wasn't until NFR, when you showed up at the booth at NFR and Treasure and Mercedes, his two daughters, wanted to get a picture with you. He goes, hey, we maybe better take a closer look at this deal. And I said, it's already done. We're doing a deal. And he said, well, let me get my picture made with him. So
that's funny.
Yeah, it was.
I remember. It's funny because I would have probably more agreed with Keith Maddox at the time personally, but you and a few others really believed in what I was doing.
Oh, absolutely.
And that was super encouraging, because I think I knew I had the tools to do something. I wasn't quite sure what it was or what it would lead to. I don't know. What's the syndrome thing they say?
Down
imposter syndrome.
Down syndrome.
Not Down syndrome. I've been accused of it, but imposter syndrome. I think that's how I felt early on for sure, and even more so now. But no, it meant a lot that American.
Why more so now?
Probably the same amount. I don't know about more so. More so may not be the right term, but
see, the thing that gives me joy, and what I think is genius on your part, is how I used to read the comments, and sometimes the comments would get me mad because I'd read some guy that was in grandma's basement, calling her for another grape soda, and he was judging you. That guy's not a cowboy. He, look at that hair. Look at he's not. That's no way. This guy's not real deal. And then the genius part of it is now you having all these real cowboys on your podcast,
right?
Not me included, but real cowboys on your podcast that work in these ranches, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that time we were down and did. And I'm like, that's genius, because that shut up all them guys in the basement that had no idea what they're talking about.
There's some people that, it's funny you say that, like that exact scenario. Like I ran into a couple guys at the last ranch rodeo I went to down in Houston, and they would walk up like, I don't like your stuff, but I did listen to that one, and it's just like they'll lead off with that, like, I don't get on that Facebook much, but I do this or that, and there's that one, and it's just like, oh, okay. And so it's funny that you say that because it's like the exact scenario but I early on, somebody kind of put words in my mouth by saying nobody gets more mad at Dale Brisby than the real Dale Brisbys out there.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
exactly. Yeah.
Which
the guy that tongue in cheek with a heavy dose of sarcasm that you're actually kind of a wink and a nod making fun of.
Yeah.
And that's the guy that, he wants to justify his existence as a real cowboy. Yeah. And I don't, what does that term mean?
Right.
It's different to everybody. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in the hat business. And if I just sold to what I consider real cowboys, I'd sell, a few hats a year and be done.
Right.
But I'm not trying to just sell to real cowboys. You don't have to, in my world, you don't have to live it. It's not about your zip code. Mm-hmm. It's not about what you do for a living. It's about where you reside in your head and your heart. Mm-hmm. And so I have this story that I tell often about a guy at the national finals that come up and he's looking at a 1000X hat. Guy's sharp dressed, got the right boots, right, everything on. And he just keeps hesitating and going back. His wife won't come up. She stands across the aisle and he goes back and consults with her, then comes back to me, then goes back. And he did it 4 or 5 times. I said, hey, tell me what's holding you
45 times?
No, 4 or 5 times.
Oh, gotcha.
If it was 45, I'd have been done.
Yep.
But, 4 or 5. And I said, so finally I just cut to the chase. Tell me what's holding you up. Well, there's something that's in your head that we haven't talked about that's, causing you not to buy this hat. So, well, I'll be honest with you, I live in New York City. And I said, okay, what does that have to do with anything? And he said, these boots have barely ever touched dirt. And I said, okay, what's that got to do with anything? And he said, well, I just don't know if I, can wear a hat, pull that hat off. And so I said, here's the deal. If you, get in your elevator and go up to your penthouse suite, and he goes, no, it's not like that. And I said, just follow me. If you get in the elevator and go to the penthouse suite, you lay your head on the pillow, and you dream of big, wide open spaces and bright blue skies and white, puffy clouds, man, you might be a cowboy in your heart. So where you reside in your head and your heart, you don't have to live this lifestyle. You just have to love it. If you love it, then welcome to the Western lifestyle. You'll be fine. Mm-hmm. So he said, all right, I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah. Made the sale.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't, that wasn't.
No, I got it. You're not trying to just make a sale.
No, I just want to make it inclusive. I get very put off by people that go, okay.
Gatekeeping.
Yeah.
What the youngsters are calling it.
Yeah, exactly. Why are we wanting to limit people that wear hats? I mean, that's silly. Anybody in the world has permission to wear a baseball cap. Not everybody gets to wear one of these. And if you get to wear it, wear it.
Randy and I were making a video. It was a tour of the first gen back here. Mm-hmm. And it was because it had been in a lot of videos. And so I was like, well, let's just do a quick tour of it. And so I started off, this is my truck. It was my daddy's truck, my granddaddy's truck, his daddy's truck, my great-great-great-granddaddy's truck. Anyways. Yeah. And then I do a tour and I walk around and I go, all right, if you don't have a pig and string on your headache rack, then you ain't no cowboy. Right. And I thought, oh, that sounded good. Yeah. And that's what the video turned into while he was recording. By the end of it, if you don't have a rope behind your seat, if you don't have a whiskey bottle, you ain't no cowboy. Mm-hmm. By the way, if you drink, you ain't no cowboy. But I say that to say that was the first You Ain't No Cowboy video, and did not plan it because I would never actually
do that.
Tell someone they ain't no cowboy. Like that would be.
But that's the counter to who you really are.
And it fit Dale Brisby, but it's not something I would actually tell someone. Exactly. Well, it spurred and fired up every junior high kid that ever came to a booth to come tell me that I ain't no cowboy. And secretly it hurts my feelings.
And that's what this, having these, what I call real cowboys on your podcast, then and shows the relationship. Because like, remember that time we were over working on the 4.6s and we went down here and did this, and then they're like, oh shoot, maybe this guy is a real cowboy. I mean, he's you don't get to work on the 4.6s if you're not a hand.
Right. Yes, sir.
Period.
It was funny. Leon Coffey was.
I saw that one.
He was saying, what'll really stir them up, it's just, if I get caught in a video hanging out with Trevor Brazil or JB Mooney, they'll be like, that'll make them wonder. But if you were to like, and he said, if you'll name drop like a middle of the road name,
Yeah.
like maybe somebody that's 22nd in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where it's just like, all right, everybody knows who JB Mooney is.
Yeah.
But, if you say, bronc rider Riggin Smith,
Yeah.
he's higher than 22nd
I
in the
understand
world.
that.
But
You're hard to pick a
what I
name
mean?
right there.
Yeah. For him, it was Jordy Thompson. It was a guy.
Yeah.
He was back in the 80s. He was a rodeo cowboy and around, and he made a documentary. And anyways, I brought up Jordy Thompson, and he was like this. And and he was like, that's when you'll really throw him off, is you say one of those, like, not the manager of the ranch, but maybe like a South Camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the hands on South
Right.
Camp.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway.
and I think that's genius on your part. So.
Yeah.
I brought you a couple things. You
Yeah.
interested?
What'd you bring me?
So obviously I'm from Bowie, Texas. And do you know, not a lot of people know where Bowie, Texas is. So when everybody asks me, well, where's Bowie, Texas? I always tell them it's 14 miles past the spot where Jesus lost his sandals. You just got to go a little farther.
Okay.
And it's right there. So I brought you a Bowie knife. I have not sharpened that, but there's a real deal Bowie knife.
Whoa. Oh, this is a gift?
That's a gift.
Oh.
That's for you. That'll get
Dang.
you some respect around the place here with the hands. You just put that on your side, and if they give you any back talk, you pull that thing out. And I'll tell you what. You say
movie?
sit. You say sit, and they don't even look for a chair.
What movie does this make you think of? Rambo 3? I'll take that. What's the other one? No. I feel like Crocodile Dundee.
Crocodile Dundee is what I was going to say.
That's not a knife.
This is a knife.
This seems like, oh man. Well, thank you.
You bet.
Very much.
You bet. So then, as you know, I have an affinity for Texas Rangers. We got to make their bicentennial hats for the Texas Rangers and then give some back to them. So here's a criminal investigations patch from the Texas Rangers.
My great-great-granddad was a Texas Ranger.
Oh, that's cool. I love that. So the hat that I'm wearing is a Texas Ranger edition. So you can throw that thing away. But I have a collection of those patches and
that's awesome.
All those things. I actually have a bulletproof vest from the Texas Rangers hanging in my office. Got the banner on it, says Texas Rangers. And
I heard an ex-convict, his name was Quirt. He said, those Texas Rangers, they're short on temper and long on memory.
Yeah,
he said, don't ever piss off a Texas Ranger.
Yeah, no kidding. And you've heard that story of one riot, one man, right? They were having riots down in South Texas somewhere. It was the election thing that was going on, and the people were basically rioting. And so the town sheriff or mayor or whatever called Texas Rangers, says, you need to send some help down here, man. We need help bad. We're going to have riots on election day. And so he went down the train station thinking there was going to be 20 Texas Rangers come off, and off walks one guy. And he's like, where's the rest of it? He says, you just have one riot, don't you? He said, all you need is one Ranger. So I'm like thinking, that's so cool. So now they have
That's funny.
One riot, one Ranger.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. There's a couple positive time stickers, that we're all about that deal, positive times.
Oh, yeah.
Those are that's a little card thing. And I make those. I have my own Bowie knife. And so I just whittle those like out of wood at night. And
do you really?
Yeah, they're hard to hollow out.
You
but
don't.
Yeah. So I made that one for you.
Oh, man. And you got the little magnet inserted in
Yeah,
there?
that was hard getting that magnet.
Is this a wallet?
Whittling. No, it's like for your business cards.
Okay.
I mean, I know business cards are kind of out of style now. You probably are high tech.
Everybody already knows who I am.
High tech. Well, I know. And you got the dot thing. I'm sure that you can just transfer your info with a, wave of your phone or something.
I probably got that.
Yeah.
I probably got that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just when I whittled that, I thought, you know what, I better bring you one of those.
Do you have any plans for Positive Times as a brand moving forward beyond American Hats?
We've resisted monetizing Positive Times.
Okay.
It's really not about, we're not trying to sell anything with Positive Times. We're trying to give something away with Positive Times. So Positive Times, as you know, is Keith Maddox's brand. Mm-hmm. And so when he was alive, I wanted to use it. And he said, oh, no, it's not about me. It's about the hat. Just, no. But then when he passed, I asked Susan, can we use that? It might be just in his memory and I thought it might last a few months. But he died September 4th of 2019. We had his celebration of life October 4th. Well, then shortly thereafter, we were in the middle of COVID. And so I just think that the timing of it, along with the message behind it, was important. It's a biblical principle to renew your mind daily. You know, every day you have to renew your mind. And I'm not going to let the sorrows of yesterday or the loss of a loved one or the inevitable loss of a loved one in the future, or even my death in the future, that we all have that in common. None of us are going to get out of here alive. I'm not going to let those future events or past events steal the joy from today. And so that's what Positive Times is kind of all about. And we try to give something away every day, and that's a positive thought, positive saying every morning on social media. Don't ask for anything, don't need anything. We just want to give that away. So that's what Positive Times is about. So,
yeah. What so what about the Keith Mundee story? You've got so many little hidden like stories that come up hanging out with you at whether it was, January market or at the NFR there in Bowie. It just seems like there's always an occasional come up and you've got a story that ties to it. And so that's kind of what I was thinking about. I heard that you went on Charlie Crawford's podcast.
I did.
And which is another one.
He's great
in the industry.
Great human being.
And I heard it was great. I almost went and listened to it before this, but I thought, no, I don't want to listen to it first. I want to just hear your story. Yeah. Usually I'll try to do that, but anyway. Total Feeds is what keeps the herd powered here at Radiator Ranch, and Total Equine is what I've been giving Boone for 10 years. He's 24 years old and still going strong. You can get it on Chewy.com or a dealer near you. Rock and roll denim is what Dale Brisby uses to spur his bucking bulls. I get the Reflex. Gives me the mobility I need to be the cowboy I am. So go to rockandrolldenim.com, old son.
Well, I watched the John Pardee. I've known John Pardee for quite a while, but I've never really had an in-depth conversation with him because there's always 1,000 people around wanting his time.
Same.
So I just, hey, good to see you, man. I love what you're doing. And so seeing him on your podcast really let his personality come out.
Such a cool guy, right?
Oh, my gosh. What a great guy. Yeah. What a fantastic person. And then his wife, I don't know if you've ever...
I met her once.
Yeah, Summer. She is probably one of the prettiest women I've ever seen in my entire life. But just a great personality. And, obviously raising 2 daughters now. But they've been great people for our brand. Their band and, if we've ever wanted to go somewhere, Billy Bob, she just says, at one point I tried to buy tickets and they were sold out. And I had called her and said, Summer, do you happen to have 2 extra tickets? Oh, my God, yeah. So she took us, all the guys from Best Hat and everything.
Dang.
She took a whole bunch of us and gave us passes to get in there and go backstage and stand on the side of the stage. So that was a pretty cool experience. But
super cool.
I've gotten to go a lot of fun places that I've had to kind of pinch myself and say, how in the world did I end up here?
No kidding. Yeah, same.
Yeah. You've done some cool stuff with Cameron Haynes and
that was
Cowboy
super
Cerrone.
fun.
And I've watched all those. I had a weekend where my wife had gone to Idaho and I had a commitment, so I couldn't go. And I had a weekend at the house and it rained or something. And anyways, long story short.
To go where?
She went to Idaho to visit our grandkids.
Yep.
And our daughter and son-in-law.
Oh, that's when you listened to them.
So I just binge watched, all of the stuff there. And, man, it was really entertaining and really good. So then I became a Cameron Haynes fan.
Right.
I liked his mentality.
Yes, sir.
I mean.
Very different.
Yeah.
Unique.
Can I do it? No. Do I applaud it and think it's, but I'm a fan of mental toughness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan of what makes people tick.
Yep.
So when I went to school, to college, I went for education and psychology. And so I've used both of those a lot in, what I do at American Hat Company. because psychology is about what makes people tick,
Mm-hmm.
what makes them do the things that they do. I read a great book. It's called Why We Buy by
Okay.
Paco Underhill, and it's the psychology behind shopping. And that's another thing that's been, kind of a life-changing
Yeah.
moment or a paradigm shift for me. Why do people do that? So very interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Cameron Haynes, he was, unique is an understatement, I guess. But just, it's crazy how, if there's anything that he's doing, if there's whatever the average is, he just can't stand being average at that thing. And, but going on doing a lift run shoot with him, and that was the weekend. Joe Rogan followed me, and it was, I think, about a year and some change maybe, that
Then you're on Joe
that I
Rogan's
got
show.
got to go on Rogan, and give him an American hat. at the beginning.
Yeah.
That was crazy. He wore it the whole time too.
He's another game changer. He's another one of those guys that, just paradigm shift in terms of how we consume information. I just felt like I wasn't getting the truth from the mainstream media.
Right.
I know I'm getting another version from Fox.
Right.
So, sometimes you got to look to an alternative source to try to figure out what is the real truth. Because I don't really know.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, he definitely tries to find it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's fun too. He'll throw in some military, UFC, comedians, all the above, in between. But the thing I like about his setup is he brings people on that he's interested in.
Right.
And there was a lot of people in the industry, I say a lot. There were 3 different people that I remember specifically asking me, like, what marketing agency did you use to get on?
There.
It's like, no, that's not how it works. Like, he reached out. If he wants that person on, that's how he chooses his guests.
Sweet.
And that was the same thing with my podcast, and that's what led to the Texas Cowpuncher series that I'm doing. Is just like, man, these are the conversations I enjoy having every day.
Right.
And so might as well film them, and hopefully someone else can get value out of them. And some of them, are gonna. It's a niche within a niche. So, like a very specific type of ranching cowboy, and so a lot of it may not be necessarily just mainstream media hits. Like if I were to have Tom Brady on a podcast,
right?
And don't get me wrong, I'd love to have Tom Brady on.
Absolutely, who wouldn't?
But on my day-to-day, my everyday guests, it's like it's very narrow, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, me too. I love hearing from those guys. So the way that I look at marketing is, if you look at a pyramid, right? The very, very top of that pyramid, so about that much, that is the real deal, the guy that's actually working, making a living, Dusty Burson kind of guy that's making a living being a cowboy, day in, day out. That's how he lives, the Boots O'Neill.
If you're going to call Dusty a cowboy.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm being loose with it.
We'll just use it as an example, because
yeah. I'm a Dusty Burson.
But Boots,
fan. Boots. I'm a big time Boots fan. He's hilarious to me when he
so funny
starts telling stories. But anyway, so that's that's my target. That's who I'm targeting. Then the line below that, is the rodeo cowboy. And then, and then you can mix in the rodeo cowboys, PBR cowboys, those guys that are on TV that, wear a hat, but they operating in an arena. Then the next level down, you got, all the reiners, trainers, cutters, all those people. Keep going down, you have, enthusiasts, the backyard people. And then at the very bottom line, you just have people who like the Western lifestyle. Well, all of these groups are looking at that top pyramid. And so if you make something for that top pyramid, then everybody else goes, okay, that's so you got to be authentic to the core. And so that's what we try to do. That's our target,
Gotcha.
The core. Never want to lose the core.
Yeah. If you can, I see what you're saying. If you can make a cowboy hat that is, fits the cowboyest of cowboys, then everyone else should be able to.
And I've seen people on, well, I prefer a custom fit, or I prefer a custom guy. I like custom cowboy hats. Well, a custom hat, I mean, there's some great custom hat guys out there. J.W. Brooks is phenomenal. You know, I think Shorty's probably makes a great. But if you want whip stitching around the edge, you want, you know, a rattlesnake band, or you want it to be distressed to look like you've been wearing it for a long time, that's not what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do that. We make a classic, timeless thing that will last forever. That, well, not last forever, but the high dollar ones, the 1000X, will be something you hand down to the next generation. A 10X is going to last you a few years, and then you're probably going to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, we have a thing in our catalog that says your cowboy hat is with you on the worst of days.
Mm.
You know, when the rain wants to run down the back of your jacket, or the sun's beating on the back of your neck, your hat's there to protect you. But then the other thing's cool about a cowboy hat, it gets to go with you on your best days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you walk your daughter down the aisle, or maybe when you meet your grandkid for the first time, you know, and that, so like all my 1000X hats have my grandkids' names and their birthdays in them. So they'll get those hats when I'm done.
Mm.
But then when your journey here on this earth is over, your cowboy hat will hang on the wall silently in remembrance of you. So the hat means something, stands for something, is the symbol of the great iconic American cowboy and the cowboy's values. And so that's what we're trying to do at American Hat Company, is keep those values intact.
Yeah.
And, you know, have those common core goals. So.
Yeah, it's crazy you phrase it like that. Every year, Helotes is like first weekend in May.
Yeah.
And so we would always
that one, yeah.
stop by Catalina Hatters in Bryan.
Yeah, great
and
people.
We would grab a straw hat and then go to the rodeo. And I say every year, it seemed as though it was 2 or 3 years in a row. And then there was this one year I decided to fight bulls for Sammy Andrews. And so I got all his rodeos, and I was in Paris, Texas, and fighting bulls rather than going to Helotes with my dad. And anyhow, but it was always an American straw that we just had to. And I don't know, I couldn't wear. What do you say? Like, you can find a cheaper hat. The problem is you got to wear it.
Yeah, it's not hard to find a cheaper hat, you know, because I've had people, oh my gosh, these hats are so expensive. And I tell them, dude, it is not going to be hard to find a cheaper hat. The hard part's when you got to wear it every day.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're going to leave something to the next generation, or you're going to have pictures taken or whatever, I mean, for the love of God, wear the best hat you can possibly get. And, you know, they're not for everybody.
Yeah.
I'll say that right up front. Not for everybody.
No, I had to, that was when I was in college with no money.
Yeah.
And even right after, like that was the kind of cowboy hat I was going to wear.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, I went to Paris, and my dad went to Helotes, and he, first bareback rider out, you know, had a heart attack, and he was not a fan of his hat coming off. Like his ears were always
bent
down and bent, his ears. And so you know, it was cold that day, and he, you know, hit the ground, and there's a big mud spot. But I have that hat on my mantle, that American straw hat on the mantle with a mud spot on the left side of the crown.
Wow.
And anyhow, it's funny you say that. I mean, I've thought that about some of my personal hats. You know, I've worn this one for too long. I need to probably get but I just can't stop wearing it. It just fits like a glove now. But
and that's the thing. They become I have a hard time. I just got straw hats yesterday, but I wore a felt hat today because I'm just not used to looking at myself in a straw hat quite yet. Takes a while. Takes a little bit for it to grow on me, to be honest with you. So, I don't know what it is, but I tell people 1/8 of an inch isn't a really big deal till it's on the edge of your hat, the end of your nose, and there's one other spot, and I can't remember what that is. But 1/8 of an inch starts to add up, you know, and you put 1/8 of an inch on your hat.
What's your brim?
I go 4.5. 4.5.
I got to go 4 if I go like this as big as I can get. Some of mine are 3 3/4, but I really like the 4.
We have a phrase for that, but I can't say it here, but that's okay.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what is it that you remember? What's the stories that you tend to tell the most about Keith Maddox?
Oh my so probably one of the men who's had a huge influence on my life, and he didn't preach to me at all. So he didn't tell me how to live or tell me how to do something. He showed me. And so, but his mantra really was, about being positive and humor, lots and lots of laughter. Oh my gosh, we laughed at so many doggone things that I can just remember times that he came into my office one day and he said, I got to tell you a story about what I did, and he had been down to Arizona and roping, and he had a gal, Mundee, who would drive him around and take care of the horses. This one, toward the end when he wasn't feeling real good. And she rode horses for him, and she saddled, and she did all this other stuff. Well, he had gone over to, I can't think of the guy's name. It doesn't matter. Friend's house. Anyway, and so when he left there, he just walked out the truck and instinctually got in the passenger side of the truck, and he's sitting there thinking, uh-oh. I got on the wrong side of the truck. He said, Mundee wasn't there to drive me. He said, I'd driven myself over there. And he said, so I knew that the minute that I get out of this truck, I got to walk around the front and get on the other side. And I got to, And so he said, I knew that the minute my taillights hit that guy's gate that he was texting everybody we knew. And you ain't going to believe it. And so he laughed so hard at himself, he could hardly tell me the story. But, just funny stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And then, this is a little off color, but I remember the first time I'd ever heard the F word as a 6-year-old kid. And I had an uncle, and I was telling him, where to drive. Or I said, hey, I think you missed your turn. You need to go down that way. And he said, hey, I'm effing this chicken. You just keep the feathers out of my mouth. And I thought, my gosh, that was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. So obviously I repeated it to my mom. And so then my mom, said, hey, you can't say that in front of the boys. And so, I can remember my uncle coming, hey, if you're going to tell your mom everything it says on us, when we're hanging out together, he said, we won't be able to hang out together. He said, I'll just leave you at the house. And so from that point on, I knew that there were some things that were non-repeatable. Here I am doing it on your podcast. But Keith Maddox, when he wasn't feeling very well, we would always go to the Windy Ryan roping, and that was kind of his weekend on the town. It was Memorial Day weekend, and so we went there. And then it was his birthday, his 70th birthday, right around in that time there. And Susan decided to throw a surprise birthday party for him at the Lonesome Dove. His best friend was John Swafford, his neighbor out there. They, running buddies for a long time. And John Swafford called him and said, hey, I got a reservation at Lonesome Dove. I want you to, come have dinner with me and my wife and Susan. And he tells Swafford, no, I'm not, I can't go. He said, I'm here with Mundee, and we're going to go have a cocktail or whatever afterwards. Well, he'd have a lot of cocktails at Windy Ryan, and I knew I had to drive him, so I didn't have any cocktails. Anyways, and so Robert Lever with Wrangler at the time, because I mentioned, hey, we got to go to, Lonesome Dove here. And he said, no, it's not, it's going to be crowded, the Colonial. We're not going there. He said, we're going to go somewhere else, so we're going to go up the road, the long one. And so I had to get Robert Lever. I said, Robert, I need help. I got to get him to the Lonesome Dove because that's where the surprise party was. And Susan said, you got one job, and that's after Windy Ryan. You got to deliver him to the Lonesome Dove, and we'll surprise him with this party. Man, he didn't want to go to the Lonesome Dove. That was the last place in the world. So I got Robert Lever to say, I said, you got to tell him, he'll ask you, where do you want to go have a cocktail? And you tell him Lonesome Dove, they got whatever. So Robert Lever says, hey, yeah, let's go to the Lonesome Dove and have a cocktail. They got the best martini or something like that. And I looked at him kind of, martini? I didn't see him as a martini guy. But Maddox goes, okay, we'll go there for one. Anyway, he had been, he had prostate cancer. So when he had to go to the bathroom, he had to go to the bathroom. And so I'm driving him there. And I knew I was lining up to go, on the valet. So I had to go kind of around the block. And when I made that turn to go around the block, he said, oh, no, it's right over there. And I said, hey, listen, I'm effing this chicken. You just keep feathers out of my mouth. And, we got to laughing. And then he couldn't hardly hold it, And so he said, oh, my gosh, you're going to make me wet my pants. And we laughed and laughed. So that made it even funnier. And so by the time I got him to Lonesome Dove, he was in dire straits. And so he got out and jumped in and went in there and went to the bathroom, but he passed by a lot of people that were there for the party. When he come out of the bathroom, boom, then it was, surprise, and it was a big thing. And I go, sorry, man, I had to bring you here. And then, but everybody was there. It was a great time. We had a private room. But I do remember that when the night was over, I don't know what, midnight, whatever, I said, okay, well, we're just, we're time to wrap it up and head on out of here. No, we're going up the road. I go, more? He's 70 years old, and I'm already dragging a leg, and he didn't want to quit. Yeah, we're going up the road. So Susan and my wife and the girls, they went back to the condo. We were going to spend the night there with him at the condo. And so I went with him back up to the Longhorn. And I'm telling you what, he had no quit. And so finally, when everything was done, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. Everybody's got to go home. I said, hey, we don't have a ride. And neither one of us knew how to do Uber because our wives always did it. I said, do you know how to call Uber? He goes, no, I don't know how to do it. I said, he says, do you? You do, don't you? I go, no, I don't know how to do it. I don't do Uber. And so we walked out of the Longhorn Saloon and a car pulled up. And he said, are you Uber? And the guy goes, yeah. He said, oh, good. I'm glad you're here. We just jumped in the car and told him where to take us and went. And I go, I think we just stole somebody's Uber. And he goes, oh, it don't matter. He said, they'll call for another one. And, but that's just how he lived. He said, just clean living, and that's how it goes. He just was the luckiest guy on the planet Earth. Everything seemed to line up for him. And I believe he got out of here at the right time. After COVID hit, I would tell people his timing was always perfect. And he just slipped on out of here before the mess.
He seemed like, even before American Hats, like just such an entrepreneur.
He was.
Very entrepreneurial minded.
He had dabbled in the oil business, the diamond business. And then he was a top salesman at Tony Lama, in the heyday, like in the urban cowboy days. They drove around, and I remember him telling me a story about all the Tony Lama salesmen. Justin was starting to come on, and all the Tony Lama salesmen just thought they'd back them off a little bit, so they went down and bought Lincoln Continentals, matching Lincoln Continentals. He said so. He had a Bill Blast blue Lincoln Continental. Dang. He said, I didn't want the damn thing, but he said, Spick Hopper, who was kind of their leader at the time, it chided me into getting it. So he said, I just bought me a Bill Blast blue Lincoln Continental. But he was weird because he was getting big checks. He'd get, $30,000 a week commission check from Tony Lama. And he'd put him in a drawer. Just put him in a drawer. And if he was going to spend, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, he'd go, put this one in, put that one in, put that one in. And he'd deposit the money and then spend it. And Tony Lama called him one time, what are you doing with your checks? He said, well, I just kind of stash them. And he said, our accounting system is screwed up because of your checks. He said, deposit those dang checks. But he just kept them in a drawer.
Dang.
Yeah.
Sounds dangerous.
Did that? Yeah. Yeah.
Like if they'd have gone out of business or something.
Yeah, exactly. Would have been, had they called and said, hey, we're bankrupt. But
yeah,
he, that's just how he did it. And it was funny. And he tells me about writing counter checks. You know a counter check?
Nope.
You can go into a bank and you can just write a counter check and, submit it to the bank, any bank, back in the day, before all the scammers. And he did that. He wrote a counter check for a motorhome one time.
Dang.
Yeah, just deposited the money as needed. Okay, I need 80,000, like that.
Didn't he always used to? Who was the bull rider that he used to run around with that he would had stories about? Like there's the one with Everclear in the morning.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Who was that bull rider? Bob something?
Yeah. I can't think of his last name, but yeah, he was the guy that was kind of an instigator in maybe the Winston tour, anyway, he was trying to change the world of rodeo for the better, and the Everclear story is a phenomenal story.
What happened? What happened with the Everclear? I remember laughing.
Yeah, this guy started drinking quite a bit, and he'd drink, vodka. So he started off in the morning. He'd just throw that orange juice concentrate in a jug, and then he'd douse it with a fifth of vodka or whatever, and just let that melt, stir it up, and he'd nurse on that for a few hours every day. Every morning. And that one morning they didn't have any vodka, but they had that Everclear in there. And he said, hey, Keith, this be good with orange juice? Keith goes, not really. He says, you're not going to like it at all. He says, horrible. He says, it's like kerosene. He says, like drinking gasoline. He said, you're not going to like that stuff at all. And he'd come back, and he had gone in the other room, got a gun. And he goes, hey, take a drink of that. Keith goes, oh, what's the gun for? And he pointed at him, and he says, I ain't messing around. Take a drink of that. I'm telling you right now, take a drink of that. Keith goes, whoa, just simmer down, dude. He said, you're getting a little squirrely here. Just because you haven't had your vodka this morning, just relax. He said, we don't need to do this. And he says, I ain't messing around. Take a damn drink. Keith goes, all right, I'll take a drink. So he takes a sip of this stuff. He said, my chest was on fire. I could feel every blood vessel and capillary in my chest and my arms. He said, it was horrible. Worst thing I ever put in my mouth ever. And he said, I'm just kind of choking. My eyes were watering. He said, geez, I feel like I'm bleeding out of my mouth. And he goes, how was it? Keith goes, it's awful. It's awful. You're not going to like it at all. He hands him the gun. He says, here, you hold the gun on me. Make me drink it.
Oh. Yeah. Was he the one running the bar for him?
No, that was a different guy. So he had what was the name of his bar in Torrington, Wyoming? He would call it a B&B. You get a beer and a beating.
Yeah, a beer and a beating.
Yeah, but he had a guy running the bar for him, and that guy got a little heavy-handed too. He had a stick or a baseball bat or something behind the bar. If they got out of line, he'd whack somebody. And he said, man, we can't do that. That's just not how it's supposed to be done. But, Keith got in a famous tussle there, even with some police officers that had come in to break a fight up. And he had no quit. He could fight.
Keith could?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. He has a reputation for that. So they'll tell.
Really?
Yeah. I think, Cody Lambert, Cody Lambert, he says, I knew he could ride bulls a little bit. His dad, Dwight, he said he rode bulls till late in his life, into his 50s. He said, but I knew Keith better because, boy, that guy could fight. He said, you got him mad. He was the nicest guy in the world, but if you got him mad or you did something you weren't supposed to do, he'd suck you in the nose.
Dang.
But I never did get on that side of him. He was, he was so good to me that,
yeah.
And that's, to be honest with you, when he died, I wondered, okay, what's next? Is Susan going to sell it? Or, I looked at the possibility of buying it, but it was millions and millions of dollars, and I could get the money. I had some people that were willing to back me on it, but I was like, it didn't make any sense. We were debt-free, and to strap that load of debt onto that business would have crippled it, would have made it really tough. Didn't make any sense. And Susan said, hey, I'll keep it if you'll run it. And I said, that's the way to do it. We'll do that. So, yeah. And then, you're concerned because I knew Keith really good. I knew Susan, because of Keith, but I didn't know her as a boss. I knew her because she was always a ton of fun. Wherever we went, you'd want to be I thought it was you'd want to sit at Keith's table, but the truth of the matter now is you want to sit at Susan's table.
Right.
Because she was fun.
Yeah.
And
I can see that.
Oh my gosh, she's a lot of fun. And if she's going to do something, she'll do it the right way. She'll go 100% and do it the right way. Anyway, but she has been fantastic. And I believe that we wouldn't be where we're at today if Keith were still alive. I think when he passed, because he was very cautious in a lot of regards, because he had lived through the times when, hey, how are we going to make payroll here? And Susan was more like, hey, let's roll the dice. Let's do it. Let's try it. And
interesting.
Yeah. So she's fearless. She's fair. She's treats you very, very well. So I have zero complaints. And I had a huge loyalty to Keith Maddox because he helped me when I needed help. And that then translates now to Susan Maddox. So my job description is to make Susan's life as good as it possibly can be. That's my job.
Yeah.
To take pressures and things away from her, to let it run as smooth as possible, and to have the company do well and not be a pressure point for her.
Hey, old son, if you're not feeding every morning with a Can-Am side-by-side, then you ain't no cowboy. I got a Can-Am because I needed a reliable ranch rig that I could use every day because I don't know how to work on stuff like that. So I want something that's not going to break down ever. Get yourself a Can-Am, old son. Hey, Bro Tater Chip, if you like getting swole-o-matic, then get yourself some Protein on mountainops.com. Hey, or if you just like being healthy, whether you're trying to bulk up, get healthy, have energy, go to mountainops.com and use code Kevin for 20% off. So where were you before American Hat?
I was with Miller International, which was Cinch, Kruger, Rockies, Southern Thread, Miller Ranch, all those brands.
How long were you there?
I was there for 15, 16 years, something like that. Yeah. It was a great ride, great brand, it was a lot of fun. They got a lot of good people there. But, they'd changed hands and new ownership and, things were going in a different direction. And Keith had called, and he didn't ask me if I wanted the job, but he asked me if I knew of anybody who could take over American Hat for him in the event that something bad had happened, because he told me he had cancer. And so I thought about it for a couple of weeks thinking, who could do that? And then we finally went, hey, could I do that? And he goes, well, yeah, you can, but I can't afford you. And I said, oh, okay. Well, I said, the right people make you money and the wrong people cost you money. And he goes, when can you come to Fort Worth? And so went down there and we wrote our numbers on napkins, and his was over here, mine's way over there. He said, I can't swing that. I can't even live on that. I can't even make a rent payment if I didn't have a house. So he goes, well, what about here? Can we do anything here in the middle? And he negotiated like Donald Trump, So we arrived at a number in the middle that I thought I could survive on, and made the change. And at the time, I had already left Miller, and I was helping Chris Cox with his TV program and his ranch, and that was a lot of fun. Chris Cox was another one of those great human beings, in my life. But anyway, so then Keith said, "Well, I'll be ready for you in about a year." So year to the day, he called me and said, "Hey, I need a guy, so like a sales manager." And I go, "What about me?" I said, "I've been waiting around here for a year." He said, "Well, I can't afford it." So we settled in the middle, and then I went to work for him July 2nd, 2011. And then that year, right after NFR, he called me in his office and wrote me a check for the difference from that to what I'd asked for. And I said,
Dang.
I said, you don't have to do that now.
How long after you had started?
Well, from July to December. Right after NFR, we had a great NFR, and we could see things ticking up, and we'd sold, a lot of hats. And he'd always tell me, man, you can sell a hat, and so he had a affinity for people who knew how to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And I sell with stories. I don't, try to tell you too much about features. But I try to educate you on feeling a hat.
Right.
So you'll feel a good one, and you feel the high end and the low end. And then you might tell me, well, I can't do that, but I can do better than that. So now I know you're in the middle.
Yes, sir.
And so you just told me where you're going to be. So then I sold you a 40X. Anyhow, so from July 2nd to the end of December, he just, wrote me a check for the difference. And then I remember him saying, I got more good news. And I said, okay, what's that? He says, I'm going to get me a new truck. And I said, wow, that is good news. Hey, congratulations. Perfect. And he said, then there's one out in the parking lot. It's got about 26,000 miles on it, and that's yours. So that's how he was.
Mm-hmm.
Another situation with him, he said, hey, would you ever consider moving here to Bowie? At the time, I was living in Mineral Wells. And I said, absolutely. I'd move to Bowie. And he said, can you hop in a truck? I want to show you this house. So we drove out to the lake there on the golf course, and he knew of some people there that hadn't put their house on the market, but the guy was he was in the oil business getting transferred. So he said, they're going to be selling this house. I looked at it, and it was a really nice place, big high ceilings and all the right stuff, and pool, and great backyard. It's a little bit like a mullet, so it's a kind of business up front, but then the parties in the back. Yeah. And so I said, well, I'm going to negotiate. So I tried negotiating with the people, and they didn't have a lot of room to negotiate. And finally, he just told me, buy the house. And I said, well, I'm trying to get it. He goes, buy the house. And I said, okay. So I told my wife, I said, well, he wants to buy that house. So we had done well when we left Miller and had a house there, and we did good on our mineral wells house. And so we bought the house. And I come in and told him, I said, okay, well, I bought it. I said, I just put it down and, I'm going to make a payment. And he goes, which payment? So I told him, and he said, okay, you're going to get a housing allowance now. And so he paid the three quarters of my house payment with a housing allowance
wow.
through American Hat Company. So that's the kind of person he was. And I told him, I said, I'll never ask you for more money. I don't like that. I don't like, somebody coming to you and going, hey, I need to make more money. Anytime somebody's ever asked me, how do I go to my boss and ask for more money? I said, don't do it. Don't do it. What you need to do is go, what can I do here extra on top of what I'm already doing to make some more money? I'm willing to do more, but I want to make more. So ask him, what can I do? I want to be at this level. How do I get there?
Mm-hmm.
And so I told him, I'll never ask you for more money. If I can find a better deal, I'll just find it and come in and say, hey, 30 days, I'm going to go do something else. And he just treated me better than anybody's ever treated anybody, I think. So.
Yeah.
And then Susan's the same. She is just so generous and so good to work for, and get to go do a lot of things. If we make a trip to Portugal, I'm not flying in coach.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate her way of traveling and way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't step over a dollar, pick up a dime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. What percentage of your savvy with the way you run that company do you feel like came since you started at American? I mean, I know you had he recruited you for a reason. He paid you well for a reason, but it seems as though like American has been your baby. And I guess just as a businessman, I'm curious how you feel you've learned over the last however many years you've been
he
there.
taught me, because I really didn't know the manufacturing side of things as well. I knew distribution,
okay,
and I knew sales. I knew how to sell stuff to a retailer, but I didn't know the manufacturing side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but he taught me that,
mm-hmm.
and it's by numbers. It's all numbers. So I know what every employee in the whole factory has done. I get a report at every break, and I can see right where they're at. I know how many hats have been completed and how many still we have to go. Everybody has a goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you hit your goal, you get a bonus. And if you can go a percentage above your goal to where you can get double that bonus. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of people motivated to get that. Mm-hmm. But we can't lose sight of quality. So everybody signs a ticket. So if you were doing back sewing, we'll call it one of the stages. If you're doing back sew, every time you back sew a leather, you have to sign a ticket that goes in the hat. So if that hat ends up in inspection and the back sew gets failed because it wasn't quality, then we're coming back to you going, hey, do we need to help? Is your machine, something wrong with your machine? If we need, so I call it, we help them out. We try to help them out. Mm-hmm. And then if that doesn't work, then we literally help them out.
Gotcha.
You can't sit there behind that machine if you're not going to do it quality.
Right.
So it's really all about quality. The people in inspection, we never, ever ding them for being too picky. They will get dinged if they let something go by.
Gotcha.
Something come back and I go, who missed that?
Right.
But if you're too picky, they'll come, is this going to work or not? We try to be very, very picky. I tell them perfect to be close enough.
What percentage of your work week are you dealing with the best hat store in Fort Worth?
About 0.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
That's always been Susan's baby.
Yeah, that's Susan. Susan and Mercedes are running that, and they got
Gotcha.
Danny and Ryan managers, I don't do anything with the best hat at all.
Gotcha.
Other than try to make hats and keep the hats on the shelf there.
Gotcha.
But they're placing orders with us just like every other retailer.
Mm-hmm.
But they're savvy enough that they're placing their orders far enough advanced that the production, we've got them slotted in production.
Gotcha.
So, and if they need to back off, they can always back off and tell us, hey, we don't need hats for a week, and then we can slow down a little bit. But it's all numbers, really. And so right now, my complete and total focus is on factory efficiency. Our biggest thing is we need to make more hats. We're sold out for about 2 years on felt hats.
Oh, it's still that far out.
Yeah, we have that many orders. So we're.
Is there anything in that's worrisome for you? I'm just not sure. Like,
in
terms
that's a good
of
question, fair question. So I always look at like a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And obviously, this tariff situation at 145%, the raw straw bodies, we all get them from China. There's it's not a big secret. Everybody gets them from China. They're hand woven. There are some things you can get in Mexico, some Panamas and some palm leaves, but a Panama is super expensive, super fragile. The palms are great hats. They're just hot and heavy, and they smell really bad.
Yeah.
Other than that, they're perfect.
No, they are what they are.
Yeah. Keith would tell you if somebody walks in the Best Hat store and wants to buy a Panama or a palm leaf hat, he said, reach in the register, give him $15, and have him go up the road. You'll be money ahead. Yeah. So he said that's not what we do. But this, the shantung and the fancy weaves and stuff like that, that's kind of what we're known for, fancy vent. Mm-hmm. None of our hats are made with a loom. They're all hand woven. Mm-hmm. And so with 145% tariff, we're already at, $200 on a straw hat, which is, I remember when we went over 100, and just the prices, everything just keeps going up. So if the tariffs were to stay in place, it could be the end of the cowboy hat, the straw cowboy hat as we know it.
Dang.
Yeah. I mean, it could get to there. I mean, I'm prepared to lobby, Trump through, I've got some avenues that I can reach him and just say, look, that ain't coming back.
Yeah.
Nobody in the U.S. knows how to do it. It'll never come back here. If you want to be the killer of the cowboy hat, maybe you need to carve us out just like electronics and some things got carved out from the tariff thing. But, our suppliers, we've told them, well, when Trump was elected, we just bought $1.8 million in raw straw bodies just to try to beat the tariff situation. So, but they're going so fast that we have more that are ready, but we're not taking them right now because we're waiting for that thing to kind of work its way out. So I think it will. I really do. I've got to be positive about it. It's not going to stay there. It'll, that's what Trump does. I mean, that's how he negotiates.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole plan.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily to stay there, but
he's not an idiot. He got there for some reason. So
right.
I gotta, nobody elected me president. So I just got to kind of write it out and hopefully it works. But if it ends up staying there for an extended period of time, then I would try to reach out and say, hey, I know it's a small business, but man, we sure like to get a little carve out for some, raw straw hats.
Right.
So,
huh. That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that side of it. So, but that's not necessarily what's affecting the 2 year.
No. The 2 year thing is just orders. We've got that many orders.
Is there a supply issue or is it just that long of a process?
No, we can only make so many hats a day, and we have to be able to make more hats because the brands become popular and sought after, and but we're not going to acquiesce and make more hats at a less quality. Mm-hmm. So that's just not good. That's a game changer. That's a non-negotiable that Keith Maddox would have smacked our hand for that. So
for sure,
we're staying the course. We're trying to make more hats, and we are. I looked at the first, January, February, March. I want to say we made 39 more felt hats a day. It doesn't sound like a lot, but over a day,
right?
But over 224 days in a year, then It's a lot of hats.
You bet.
So we're making more, but quality's got to stay.
Yeah. Well, I'm super curious about, and maybe you want to talk about it, maybe you don't, but the part of your story that involved wrestling.
Well, that's a
Sounds so fun.
yeah. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was a rough time in my life. I'd been cut from baseball, and I got to travel.
On what
with,
level?
I played some professional baseball. I just made it to Double A. I didn't get anywhere big or nothing. I had my arm got sore. But my catcher from high school was in professional wrestling. His brother was a promoter, so I went out to kind of travel with him a little bit and just figure out what my next move was. And so I kind of got involved with it in a small way. I mean, it wasn't WWE like it is today, so just don't get that in your head.
Yeah.
But
well, it's impossible for me to not get that in my head.
I know, but so I was no big time wrestling star by any means of the imagination, but I can remember working out with my buddy, and we were trying. The first thing he had us do was run the ropes, and so you have to run the ropes. You'd hit, and you'd have to kind of grab one rope and put your arm up on the other rope so you didn't flip over, because if you hit them too low, they flip you right out into the front seats. And so run that rope, and then you come back, hit that rope, and then you come back, hit that rope, and then you go this way, that way. And by the time that we were done doing it, me and another guy were done doing that the first day, we were black and blue all through here. It was black and blue.
Dang.
And so it was it's a tough business. It's tough.
Didn't you have like some back surgeries from it?
I've had my back fused, so my lower back is fused. But
is that from that or from other things?
From some other things, and then that was the final, icing on the cake. But so it was a little bit of a underground. This was like high school gymnasiums, and wasn't.
That sounds like the coolest, just fun party trick. Not a party trick, but just like a story, something to pull out of your hat. I didn't even know you played professional baseball. See, that's what I'm saying. I would just always learn something new every time we talk about it.
Well, it was like I've done a lot of things, but I haven't been really good at a lot of them. So I just move on to the next one, trying to find something I'm good at.
What was it? Weren't you doing? What were you doing in California when you lived out there?
I had a commercial team. Well, I had a business, a metal fireplace installation business, a distribution and installation. So we were doing metal fireplaces and all the new construction going on in Southern California. So I had 183 guys or whatever at the time, and we were doing about 1,900 fireplaces a month.
Golly.
So we're the largest installer and distributor of metal fireplaces in new construction, and that was called Western Fireplace. Did that for a long time. That was a great run, but then we wanted to sell it when there was a little bit of a downturn looking in the economy. And there was a company that one of our suppliers that really wanted to sell it to control the distribution. And so sold that. And then I had some time off and built an arena at my house in Grand Terrace, California, and put lights up, because obviously I didn't want to rope during the day. It was too hot. Mm-hmm. And so then I had a commercial team roping arena for 8 or 9 years there. And that was a lot of fun. And I roped every day, and that's, but at some point, all your friends have to go to work, and you're hanging around the middle of the day going, well, now what am I going to do?
Right.
Nobody wants to, run steers with me. And so that all happened at night. And I had an epiphany one night. I'm turning off all the lights and heading back up to my house. It was Grand Terrace. So my house was on the top level. The next level is where all the barns and everything were. And then you go down one more level, and that's where the arena was. We didn't want to put the arena where it would, ruin our view. Well, I'm coming up to the house, and I'm thinking, what am I doing? I'm picking up aluminum cans, all my buddies had left me. And I thought, I'm an idiot. I'm down here making dust, and my wife and my 2 kids are up there in the house asleep.
Yeah.
I go, this is just not smart.
Yeah.
I'm making dust. And so that's all I'm doing. And so I had taken a trip to Idaho. I was going there for team roping, and a friend of mine in the Western business had moved there for a territory change with Weaver Leather. And, man, I got there and I fell in love with Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met his brother-in-law who was running a big ranch out at a place called Reynolds Creek. And he needed some help gathering some cattle. And so I'll never forget, we had obviously had a cocktail or two and ended up going back to his place out at Reynolds Creek because we were going to get up in the morning and go up and gather some cattle. And when I laid down, it was like so flipping quiet. I couldn't even, I could hear myself breathing. I could hear my heart beating. And we got laughing. He's in one room and I'm in another room, and we got laughing, obviously at that point, something was funny and we thought everything was funny. So we laughed for probably an hour, hour and a half. Anyway, we wake up in the morning and he's bald headed, and I said, "Hey, Rick, you got a comb or something?" He goes, "Do I need a comb?"
Yeah.
I go, I guess you don't have a comb. So just put a hat on and off we went. But I remember him going into the kitchen and he's making, this is in the dark, this is like 4:00 in the morning. It's in the dark. And he's got extra sourdough bread, pastrami, mustard. I don't think he had any mayonnaise. And we had lemon lime sodas from Albertsons. And he said, "Smell this meat. Does this meat smell like it's okay?" I go, "Oh, no, that's not good." It was pastrami. That's not good. That's not good. He said, "Well, that's all I got." And I go, "Well, I'm passing. I ain't gonna eat that." And he makes some sandwiches anyway and wraps them in tin foil, and we put them in our, in a roll behind our saddles, and off we went to gather cattle, which was great. We jumped them up into a stock truck and drove them up. And this friend of mine had asked me, I had a brand new pair of chaps, and they were like a cream colored, and they had fringe. And he says, "Hey, would you wear them and kind of get them broke in for me?" And I said, "Sure." So I told Rick, who's the guy on the ranch, I said, "Hey, Rick, Kelly wants me to break these chaps in for him." He said, "Perfect." He said, "We'll break them in." So we tied them to the back of the stock truck and drug them all the way up the mountain, and then got up on the mountain and we gathered cattle and wore them all day long. And finally, I don't know, about 4:00 in the afternoon, he said, "Hey, let's get something to eat." It was hot, and I remember we crawled underneath the stock tank, and he started eating. He goes, "Oh, this sandwich is a good sandwich." And I'm like, "I don't know, man. I don't know," but I was hungry, and had a warm lemon lime, and from Albertsons, and he said, "Give it a try." He said, "This is a good sandwich." That was the best sandwich I ever ate in my entire life. I call it the stinky meat sandwiches that Rick made, on that trip. But we was tired enough that, man, that was a good sandwich, and that warm lemon lime was just perfect.
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm talking about it when
Yeah,
you're just
for sure.
so tired and you just anything will do. Anyway, I'd gone through some briars or something, and I had that caught me on the face and scratched my face like that. I think it was 2 scratches, something like that. Anyway, no big deal. We're driving back down, and then I threw the chaps in the back of the underneath the horses. So they stomped on it. They obviously urinated on them and defecated on them. Anyway, so then we get back down the mountain, and we get back down the ranch, and as we're driving through, he looks over and he's seen a badger digging a hole in one of his ditch banks. He goes, "Hey, we got to go get the backhoe." And he says, "I'm going to pull that badger out." He says, "You're going to kill him?" "Kill him." I said, "We don't have a gun?" He goes, "No, just hit him with a shovel." And so I'm on the ground. He's in the backhoe now, and he scoops this badger out. And I hit him, a couple of times with that shovel, and he's laughing. I look up at me. This badger still wanted to crawl at my leg. And he's laughing so flipping hard. He said, "Hit him hard like a baseball bat." And I just whapped him, So I killed this badger. Anyway, so then we took the badger blood and smeared it all over those chaps. So we get back into town, not that night, but the next day we go back into town to a roping arena where I was staying, where I had a place. And the guy that owned the roping arena was a big-time outfitter. And so we're sitting on the tailgate of a truck. We got this badger laid out, and the chaps are there, and they're full of blood, and most of the fringe is ripped off of them, and they look like they've been ruined. And we're drinking the little Olies, little smart little beers, and because they had a little saying on the inside of the cap, and we'd do all that. Anyway, So up comes this outfitter, Dave Stucker's his name, well-known outfitter there in Idaho. And goes, hey, what the heck? Where'd the badger come from? Rick, the guy I was with, he said, you ain't going to believe this, Dave. He said, Keith was loping across this open pasture up there on the mountain. He said, and his horse hit a badger hole. It come down, went over on top of him. He said, next thing I know, he's got that Spyderco knife out, and he's like stabbing something. And I'm like, what in the hell's going on over there? Anyways, this horse stumbled in the badger hole, flipped over, landed on this badger. He jerked the badger out and stabbed him. And so Dave Stucker's going, oh, my God, I thought you was from California. And I said, I am. He said, well, you're welcome here in Idaho. He says, this would be a good place for you. He said, you'll fit right in. So he just started calling me the badger killer. And, that story spread everywhere. And Rick goes, don't ever tell. I'm telling the truth right now. But Rick's like, don't ever tell the truth. Sucker actually went down and had that badger mounted for me in a glass case. And, I felt so guilty. But long story short, we laughed and laughed and laughed about that story for many, many years.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. But then I fell in love with Idaho, is my point. And I went home from that trip, and I remember telling my wife, and I'm sure you've heard this from like rodeo clowns or whatever, but I kept postponing my return trip home. I said, hey, I'm going to stay another 4 or 5 days, stay another week, whatever. And fine, my wife's great, she's just, okay, honey, but no problem, everything's good here, and I'm like, okay, thanks, baby. And so finally the third one, she said, well, okay. She said, well, one thing I got to tell you, see, there'll be some sex going on in our house on Saturday night. If you want in on it, you better get home. I said, I'm on my way. So, I made sure I got home. She has a way of doing that. I had another situation where she told me, you just do what you tell your daughters to do. And, straightened me out right away.
That's funny.
But she had a way of, fixing any of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I fell in love with Idaho. And it was maybe 6-7 months we moved back to Idaho. And I just felt like I needed to throw myself in the path of progress and let it sweep me up.
Yeah.
And then D. Pickett, I got involved with D. Pickett, who's another person who had a big influence on my life. This is a guy that has no quit. And this is a guy that will find a way to win. I don't care what it is you're doing. If you're playing basketball, cards, marbles, he finds a way to win. He is a very impressive individual when it comes to that. And so D had a influence on my life when it come to, no quit. Yeah. He's got Navy SEAL mentality.
Really?
Yeah. And if I've seen him wrestle with different guys or, somebody want to challenge him. A young guy, one of Cody, his kid, one of his football playing friends want to challenge D. He'd say, son, you don't want none of this. And I've seen him wrestle, and he'd get him down. He said, okay, call me Uncle D. Call me Uncle D. He'd make him, okay, Uncle D, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So he if he was on you, it was like a hobo on a ham sandwich. You'd be in trouble.
Dang.
But tough guy.
What was his line of work? What did you do with him?
We did fabric covered arenas. So those big buildings, they're called coverall at the time, but now D has his own business that he then figured out a way to do it better. Mm-hmm. And, he's done a great job. He did salt and sand storage.
Yeah.
And then you've seen him all over now.
Yeah.
But he was the guy that, kind of reinvented how to do that.
Right.
So he just found a better way.
Huh. And then on to Miller.
Yeah. From there, then I went to work with Miller. Yeah. They had needed somebody to cover the Pacific Northwest, and I was living in Boise, so it worked out great. And that was another one of those things that was really phenomenal. I think when I started in that territory, I was doing like 600,000. So if you did the commission on that, it was like 36,000 a year. So it wasn't really a job. It was, And then by the time I was ready to move out of that territory, when they asked me. They made me the Western Regional Director, so I was in charge of all the Western states, so I got a little bit of override on what everybody did. But my territory at that point was doing like $2.6 million from 600,000, so a lot of growth. And, my wife and I bought a motorhome, a bus, and we kind of when we had our customers come into the bus, they would buy more. If I hauled the clothes into the store, they would get interrupted and they'd lose their, focus or whatever. So if I could get them into the bus, my wife would count the jeans for them. And then my wife, we didn't really do it on a computer, but she had 3x5 card file. She knew what music you liked, what coffee you liked, what you liked in your coffee, and even maybe what smell, if you like the smell of leather or whatever. And so we'd have the motorhome set up, the air conditioner blown, and everything was comfy and cool, the curtains closed, and, you'd come in and then you'd get comfortable. Sometimes we'd have crackers and cheese, obviously water or sodas or whatever. I didn't give anybody alcohol. But I know we had one customer that would filibuster through the whole, I couldn't get started. So I had to finally tell my wife, had to only book her an appointment like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon because I want to get her, because at some point she'll want to go home. And so we listened for, 40 minutes in the beginning of the thing and chit-chat back and forth. And then I told my wife, I said, okay, the minute I hand her a bottle of water and I'm going to unscrew the lid and give it to her, the minute she takes a drink, I'm going to start with a line presentation. Do not interrupt me and don't ask her another question.
Dang.
And so I'd have to just keep going, and I wouldn't stop. I'd do the whole thing. And she was a good customer, but she just had a tendency to run away with the conversation. And I might be there 3-4 hours.
Yeah, what should be a 14-minute meeting turns into 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it was about we were about maybe an hour presentation as opposed to 4 hours.
And what is it you were selling?
Cinch, the clothing.
So when you were when you were the sales rep,
I was sales rep, sales rep for them. So what we had, I had all the the line, and so we would go spring, summer, fall, and holiday. So 4 times a year, I'd make a trip through the territory.
Gotcha.
And I'd be gone for 6 to 8 weeks at a time.
68 weeks.
6 to 8. Yeah.
Who was it?
This is my second round. It's getting old.
Yeah. Was that Zach Top? He was like, it's a bit. I got it.
Yeah.
It's a bit.
That guy's great too.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
But anyway, so 6 to 8 weeks.
Brother-in-law is kind of a nerd.
Who?
His brother-in-law.
This guy over here?
Yeah, I had been DMing Zach, and he just kind of would respond every now and then. And then Harrison came on to work for me for I don't know, how long had you been here? A few weeks. And it was, a few weeks into it, he was like, yeah, he's dating my sister. And we were like, no, he's not.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. Well, it turns out, he shows up to the podcast and Steamboat at Music Fest, and sure enough, Harrison's sister walks in. So, anyways, it was just a funny twist, but it was funny too that he hadn't said anything about it.
Yeah,
but
anyway. You think somebody'd want to know that, man?
Yeah, here we are trying to have a podcast.
He
was just gonna walk in with you one day.
Yeah, well, he came to the hat store and got a couple hats, and then he walked into the booth in Vegas, baseball cap and tennis shoes. And I go, dude, are you sure you need to be out here in this crowd? He said, they figure out who you are. You're going to be a heck of a time getting out of here. Oh, I'm sneaking around. He said, I'm kind of just lurking. Anyway, so he said, I need to get a couple hats. I go, I can't give you hats here, man. We've hauled all these hats down here. We're going to sell them. I said, if I give them away here, I said, I'll send you a couple hats. No. He says, I want to buy them. I said, dude, he's bought them, full price. And I said, I don't mind sending you hats, but I just can't do it here.
Yeah.
And he's been, I love his music. I love everything he stands for. He's a great guy. So.
Yeah, like I said, everything but his brother-in-law.
Yeah, what happened there?
Yeah.
Does he? What about the sister?
Hot.
Oh.
Super hot.
Yeah. Okay. Sold.
Woo!
Yeah. Every time I'm hiring like a salesperson, I always say, hey, send me a picture of your wife or your girlfriend. And he's like, what the heck is that about? I said, I'm going to make sure you're an overachiever.
Yeah.
If you're
a real salesman.
You're a real salesman. You're not dating something.
Right.
You got to, so you can look at my wife and know that I'm a salesman.
Yeah.
I'm an overachiever.
Right.
Yeah. So
you're dating Donnie's mom, then
that's a different story. Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Well, what's your favorite part of your job now? Like, what is it that excites you about walking into the factory that you get to do, like specifically in your day to day?
Yeah, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. I got about a 13-minute drive on a 2-lane country road, 1125, where everybody that is oncoming traffic gives you the finger, that finger.
Yeah.
And when I get there, I don't have to be there real early in the morning. Keith had made a deal for me at one point, another great Keith Maddox story. He said, I don't want you here at 7 anymore. You're going to burn out.
Mm-hmm.
He said, that's not, I said, you need to have a quality life. So he taught me a thing called miracle mornings. And miracle mornings are get up and get a little workout in, spend a little time with your wife, have a little coffee, plan your day, answer some emails. You can do stuff from home. But then I have to pick up the mail. And the mail comes in Bowie, Texas. It's there by 10. Mm. So I have to pick up the mail on my way to the office. And so I'm not there at the crack of dawn. Now, sometimes I'll show up at the crack of dawn just to keep everybody off their toes. But
I had to tell Lisa the same thing. She worked for me for
she's still here?
6 years. Yep, 7 years maybe.
I remember her, yeah.
Since 2018. And I told her, I said, you can't show up that early anymore. Yeah. Same thing. I was like, you'll just, I don't, looking back, I don't think she would have burnt out. I think it's kind of just in her nature, day to day. Like she's just going to be up that early, but I guess I can relate. But
I'm up early, but it's a good use of that time. Mm-hmm. So I have a pocket or a window in the morning. I'm just now, I had, knee replacement, then I had hand surgery, and I'm supposed to have another hand surgery. But I kind of got off the workout program a little bit. So I bulked up. I bulk up for the winter, mm-hmm. just in case something goes south and I need to last a little longer. And so then now I'm trying to cut it back down. So
you bet.
I got time in the morning to spend some time on a treadmill. I'm going on a black buck hunt this weekend.
Fun.
And then I'm going on an elk hunt in Utah with Casey Field.
Oh, nice.
Later in the year. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
He's been phenomenal.
Good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Are you selling those things, or how's this?
Ranch Fields?
How's that work? What does the guy got to do to get one?
No, I can get you one. The second one you're gonna have to get on ranchfield.com.
Figured, yeah.
Use code Dale.
Off Dale, yeah.
But the first one, it's all yours.
It's like crack cocaine.
Yeah.
Get me started.
It's I don't know that it's quite. I mean, it's caffeine, but they only have like 5 ingredients.
No sugar.
No sugar.
That's what I need.
So it's, I don't know. They're good. I like them. I try not to. I don't know. They're easy to sip on, and so I try not to have too many. But I definitely, like maybe one a day.
Well, I was going to bring my water thing in, but then I noticed I watched a lot of your podcasts. You always, give somebody one of them, and I thought, what does the guy got to do to get one of those?
Oh, dang!
I need one.
You didn't want? I didn't offer you one.
I need one like a baby needs milk.
Oh, let's get him one.
Yeah.
Come on, Cole.
What's that flavor? Blackberry lemonade. Perfect. So how easy I am.
There you go.
Thank you.
Dang, you're right. I didn't offer at the beginning.
And I thought about it, but I thought, I'm going to wait and see if I can talk. DB.
You even got me gifts.
DB had a free one. Something. Yeah, and then I had to buy Ranchfield when I got here. What's up with that?
No, it's no, they're good. They're coming out in stores. I know you can get them at Teskey's and hopefully some gas stations soon. But right now it's mainly online. But
how much caffeine? Got a lot.
Pretty light. These bigger cans are 200 milligrams.
That's what I need.
Which is pretty standard for any energy drink.
I need some caffeine. Where's the camera?
There you go. Yeah. Got to be good at.
I was going to be a hand model. Then I had to have hand surgery, so I had to cut that career short.
that got cut short. Yeah. What other
hand accident.
Side quests have you had that are random that I may not have known about?
Well, did I tell you about the ghost bar? No, didn't tell you about the ghost bar.
No.
So this is before I worked for American. I had a good friend of mine, Kelly Slayton, who had a saddle business, and I would go to NFR. Well, I started going to NFR Terry and I, because we had a ranch 4 hours from there. And so we would go to NFR every year. We'd save a sizable amount of money. That was our NFR fund. And then we would go to NFR and just do whatever we wanted to do. We'd, go to the rodeo, go to, this is when it was out at Cashman Field. We'd be out there, at Cashman Field walking around with, Charlie Daniels. I mean, it was a blast.
Yeah.
That was our Christmas to each other.
Yeah.
And then we were buy boots and, whatever we wanted. I remember I bought those lace-up boots when I had the construction business, and there was a gal that did manpower, like labor. If I needed help, I said, send me 15 guys on such and such a day. Anyway, so she wanted me to go to lunch one day, and I took her to lunch, and so she said, I like the whole thing, the starched jeans and the belt and the buckle and that nice starched white shirt and the hat and everything. She said, but why do you wear golf shoes? And I was, because those they had the kilty on them. She didn't understand. You don't remember the lace-up boots, the Justin lace-up?
Yeah, for sure.
She asked me, so why do you wear golf shoes?
She called them golf shoes. Yeah.
I was heartbroken. I mean, this was like the cutting edge of all things Western, and I bought like 7 pair of them in all different color. I told my wife, I said, hey, we got to take that kilty thing off there. She thinks these are golf shoes. So
yeah.
I wondered how many other people thought, that guy kind of got it going on, but then he's wearing golf shoes. So
yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah, hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I fixed that. But so before I worked for American, my first hat was black gold. And so Kelly and I had gone there, and we ended up going up to the Ghost Bar, and I'm standing at the bar, and I'm watching a flat screen TV. I don't know what year they came out. I know what year it was. It was the year that the song by Outkast, Hey Ya, was a hit.
Okay.
Shake It Like a Polaroid Picture. I don't remember.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is, I'm taking you guys way back.
Yeah, I think that was 2008.
This is the way back machine.
No, I don't know.
No, this was before 2000.
Oh, was it?
Look at, don't you have a guy that does like fact checking and all that
Jamie,
stuff?
can you pull that up?
Yeah, like Rogan's got all that and everything.
Yeah,
you don't have that?
I got a lot. They're just a little slower.
Yeah, I see that. And that's why I got the knife. That knife will demand some respect. All you got to do.
2003.
2003. Okay. So yeah, all you got to do is, Keith Maddox used to say, nothing will focus the troops like a hanging. So just got to shoot or hang one of them. The rest of them will get right in line.
Right.
So I'm at the bar and I'm looking at a flat screen TV. I'm watching a Lakers basketball game, and a guy stands next to me. He's about 375 pounds, a little shorter than I am, a black guy. And he goes, man, what's up with the cowboy hat? And I go, well, National Finals Rodeo's here. And he said, that where they ride them cows? And I go, yeah, it is. And so I didn't, want to explain the whole thing. And so I said, tell me your name. And he goes, my name's Kevin Black, but the brothers call me Black Gold. Black Gold. I said, check it out. So I look inside my hat, and it says Black Gold. He goes, oh, man. He says, so he puts it on his head, but he puts it on very respectfully, just was good with it. And he put it on kind of cocked like that, look in the mirror, and he goes, I like this hat. This is good. And so he says, can I go show my brothers the hat? And I go, absolutely. So off he goes with my hat, and I'm standing there, with hat hair. It looks like I mixed up my Viagra and my Rogaine, and my hair won't lay down. Off he goes, and I'm thinking, I got to go over and ask this guy for my hat back, and, maybe how's that going to go? One long, he's waving it. Come here, man, come here. So I go over there, and he introduced me. The first guy he introduced me to was Malik. The second guy was Malik, Deshaun, I think. The third guy was Dre, Dr. Dre. But I didn't know who Dr. Dre was. And so, and then he said, this is Dr. Dre. And I go, oh, well, what kind of doctor? He said, I ain't that kind of doctor. I said, oh, okay. So I didn't know what the deal was. So then Black Gold, Kevin Black says finally he's the vice president of Interscope Records. And so they were up there on a pre-scouting trip because the American Music Awards were held in Las Vegas at that time. And they were having a party there. The next night, he had the whole bar, the Ghost Bar at the top of the Palms Hotel, rented. And so it was going to be just a private party. So, so now I'm kind of hanging out there, and I was a kind of the comic relief at a rapper's party, and he said, "You're going to drink with me all night long. I know you guys can drink. I've heard. So I know you cowboys can drink." And he said, "You're drinking with me all night long. Everything's on me. Don't worry, you got to pay for nothing." And I remember a little glass like that of Crown and Coke was about $18. So the waitress, I thought, okay, this ain't going to turn out good. So he's drinking a Cadillac margarita, no salt. And so the waitress come over, and finally I said, "Hey, just bring me Diet Coke from now on. I don't need the Crown." I said, "You can charge whatever you want to charge." But I said, and I give her a nice tip at that point. She said, "I got you." And so she's just bringing me Diet Coke. And so he was, mesmerized by how much we could drink, the Cowboys could drink. And so then I started needling him, I said, "We're going to drink or what, man? We come here. I didn't come here to get a haircut, did I? What are we doing?" And then I go, "You want another one of them, or what are we going to do? We put a little thing on it with a nipple on it, they slow it down for you?" And all these guys are going, "Oh man, oh man."
Yeah.
And so they're just egging him on. And so he's, starting to try to catch up. And I just ordered him in. He'd get one down a little bit, bring it, "Hey, Black Gold, he needs him another, Cadillac margarita, no salt, and I'll take another one of them Crown and Cokes, without the Crown." So we went for that. I mean, we went a long time.
Dang.
Until he's, pretty well in the bag. And I'll never forget him saying, we're standing at the bar, and he said, "See all them guys over there? They want to be right where you're at right now." And I said, "Tell me why that is." He says, "Because I'm Black Gold, man. I'm Black Gold. They want to be right where you're at, right next to Black Gold." And I said, "Oh, man, that's cool." And he said, "You see a girl up in here and you tell me, you let me know and I'll get her for you." I go, No. I said, "I'm happily married. That's not my deal." And then a little bit later, I think Nicole Richie and Paris Hilton or something kind of cruised by there. And everybody stops and everybody's looking at them. And I nudge him. I say, "Hey, I'll take both of them." And he goes, "Man, I can't do that one." And I said, "Oh, well, you said." So I thought, whatever, what the deal was. And so then he had that song, that Outkast "Hey Ya" song. And so I'll never forget a moment of panic, like sheer panic. He had a girl come over. My back was to the bar, and he had a girl come over, and she started that twerking thing. She bent over like right in front of me. And during that song, there was a "Shake It Like a Polaroid Picture." And I mean, I thought my feelings was going to come out of my teeth. She was going so bad. And I didn't know what to do. I was panicked. I literally was panicked. I didn't know what to do. I grabbed the back of her G-string and just started fanning it, And oh my God, they were whipping their legs, laughing and doing all that. And so he goes, "Man, you got to come to the party tomorrow night. I got you." He gave me a gold CD. "You wear this around your neck and they'll get you in, and you be my guest," and da 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 da, and all that kind of stuff. And so, it was
But you didn't go.
Well, I called my wife and I said, "Hey, you ain't gonna believe this." I said, "Man, I ran into some guys and I said, look up, find out who Dr. Dre is." But I said, he's not kind of a medical doctor. Anyway, long story short, she said, "Man, I'm glad you had a great time, babe. That's fun. It sounds exciting." And I said, I think I'm going to go back to the party, tomorrow night and, be his guest and all that. And I guess Tommy Lee and Pamela are going to be there and blah, 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 blah. And she goes, "Well, that sounds like fun, babe." She said, "Well, just do what you would tell your daughters to do." And I'm like, oh my God, you did it to me again. You went there with me. You did that to me. And so I go, oh. She goes, "Didn't that guy Tupac or something get shot there in Las Vegas? Is that where that happened?" And I go, yeah. And so I got cold feet. I called the guy. I said, "Man, I can't make it. I'm working and I just can't make it." "You ain't working at night, man." So I got him a couple of gifts, and but he wanted me to come to the Laker game with him, or not, the NBA All-Star game, and sit courtside with him. I had to wear my hat. So
yeah,
it just a guy that I've.
So
met.
You did go to that?
Yeah. So the guy was great. He was fun, but
they don't like cowboy hats courtside.
I know.
Yeah. Turns out.
And then, but he wanted me to kind of go back to the suite. And he was pretty well in the bag. I mean, he was hanging on me at this point, and I told him, I said, if you so much as burp, like you're going to throw up down the back of my jacket, I said, I will drop you right where you stand. Because the security guys were going, hey, let me get you. And my man's got me. Leave me alone. My man's got me. And so when it was time to go back to the suite, I just thought, this might be a little over my head. So I ducked off on going to the suite.
I wasn't going to go, but it was like middle of March 2020. So the month that COVID hit.
Yeah.
Like right around, what is it, St. Patrick's Day that happens?
What?
In March? Isn't it?
Yeah, probably.
St. Patrick's Day is in March.
I'd have to look at the calendar. I'm not.
But Cowboy and I had just started hanging out, and he was like, hey, you got a passport? And I was like, yeah. And he said, well, book this flight. We're going to Canada to hang out with Dan Bilzerian at his Ignite launch party in I don't know where in Canada.
What could go wrong?
Exactly. Yeah. And so it was the same. I had the same decision moment that you did, but 2 days later, COVID hit and the whole world got shut down. So it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But I had asked him, I was like, man, I don't need to just go to a party what are we going to be doing? He was like, it's going to be me, you, and Dan. He's like, you're not just going to go be like, you're going to be right. And
the three of you? No.
Yeah. I was like, oh man, I can see how
I've
that
never
would
seen
go.
Dan. I've never seen a picture of Dan by himself.
Correct.
Yeah.
He's never by himself.
Never by himself.
He's usually got an entourage.
That's right.
And Dennis Rodman might be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That reminds me, my grandfather used to say, never loan your truck or your girlfriend to your best buddy because he'll throw a rod in either one of them. So
yeah,
you got to be really careful about that. So.
But that was the one celebrity party like yours that I didn't go to. That
I just felt like it was
worked
over
out.
my head.
That would have definitely been over my head.
I was way out of my league. I was way out of my league on that deal.
Yeah,
he was a super nice guy.
Yeah, great guy though.
Yeah,
great guy though. Yeah.
Well, that was a fun one. But I mean, just Rancheros is crazy.
Yeah, you get to see a lot of celebrities there.
Yeah. I don't want to give too much away, but I mean, I found myself having cocktails around Michael Jackson's swimming pool. Me and Keith Maddox. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
Wow. Dang.
Well, that's like a pinch yourself. Like, how did I get here? What is
right?
What's
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Ferris wheel and everything.
Yeah.
Did you get to ride the Ferris wheel?
No. Michael had passed by the time we were there, but a ranchero guy had bought it, and they just had us out there for a little soiree.
Gotcha.
And
well, that's way cooler.
It was a lot different.
No offense to Michael, but it's cooler that you're there after.
Yeah.
No offense to him at all.
Well, and there was a lot of things I didn't remember from when I was there as a kid, but I just some things were different.
Yeah.
Everything seemed bigger. Yeah.
Less hugs.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
So then the hat thing has got me to some.
Yeah, Donald Trump.
Yeah, and then probably the other big thing is Susan in Vegas booked this deal, and she thought it was a wine tasting and military kind of thing. She said, I know you like all things military, and she says, I like all things wine. And so we go to it. Well, it's not a wine, it's bourbon. And she don't really like bourbon. But we're there for the Horse Soldier Bourbon launch party, and those are the guys from the movie 12 Strong. And so they're the real guys from that real story.
Dang.
And so, and I had watched, I cannot watch a movie twice.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm wasting my time if I watch a movie twice.
Same.
That movie I have seen maybe 12 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and read the book a couple times. Those are real American heroes. And so, found myself becoming friends with those guys.
And then maybe Tropic Thunder. Those are the two movies.
Yeah.
Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
Kind of the same, but different.
But yeah. Those 3 movies you can watch more than once.
Yeah. I don't even
But typically I'm with you.
I don't even know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I'm just nodding my head.
Yeah.
But
you got to watch Tropic Thunder.
Yeah, I have not seen Tropic.
I think you would appreciate it.
Yeah.
Maybe Robert Downey Jr.'s finest cinematic work.
Oh, okay. Well,
maybe.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I'm going to take your word on that one.
Yep.
But meeting those guys was a big deal for me. And they've become friends. And so they did the 80th anniversary of jumping into Normandy and brought me back a flag from that jump and signed. And then Omaha Beach. And now I'm drawing a blank on sand and shells, rocks from 2 of the beaches that, our troops.
Iwo Jima?
No.
That wasn't a beach.
No, that was a different story. But Omaha Beach and maybe Utah Beach.
What about them?
He brought me back shells. And so
gotcha.
I have them in a...
he brought them back.
Yeah, one of the guys that reenacted the jump into Normandy. They wore period clothing and they jumped into big canopies.
Gotcha.
And jumped into Normandy on the 80th anniversary. So they made an 80th anniversary bottle of Horse Soldier bourbon. I'm not a big drinker, but they gave me a bottle and signed by them. And then, then one of the other guys, Will Summers, who I went to a big country vets event, and he is a phenomenal speaker and storyteller. He's got like 11 kids, and they don't have TV or internet, so I'm sure he's got to be a good storyteller.
Dang.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Huh.
And but he tells a great story of being there and not knowing how to ride a horse, and they put him. Then he says, you go to rodeo, and you said you want to borrow a horse, and the guy ain't gonna give you his best horse,
right?
So he said the Afghans, the Northern Alliance and General Dostrom, they said they didn't give us the best horses. I mean, we had some pretty rough, barefoot, little stallions that we were, going on these switchback trails, cutting down this mountain. Mm-hmm. And he said, for whatever reason, he said, I never ridden a horse. He said, in the saddle was like a wooden tree with a Persian carpet over it, strings for, stirrups. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you looked at them, I thought, how in the heck, I couldn't go, 2 miles on that.
Dang.
But they're riding 8 or 9 miles a day.
89 miles.
89 miles a day. Yeah. And amazing. First I thought it was a hearing issue. I know. Now I get it. But he was telling the story about, they're on this switchback thing, and General Dostrom's up in the front. And he said, I'm scared to death. I got this, dink, and I'm trying to, keep it on line, but I got all this gear on me too. He said, so, every time we got bucked off, he said, it looked like a yard sale, and we'd be picking up all our stuff, and the Afghans would be laughing at us. He said, this horse, for whatever reason, just went nose down to the offside, just went straight down this mountain. We passed all of the switchbacks and just went straight down. He said, I did not know what to do. He said, I just held on. He said he was, there was times that the horse's nose was in the dirt. There's times at the front end he stumbled all the way, but he got back up and kept going down this thing. And he said, we went down. He said, that seemed like forever. I thought I was really going to die. He said, but I couldn't get my feet out of the strings for stirrups. And I figured if I did, I'd just get drug. So I just tried to hang on. I leaned back and tried to get my feet out in front of me. So I rode this thing all the way down to the flat. And he said, I'm down there, and this horse is bleeding, and it's breathing heavy and yada, yada, yada. And he said, and I'm scared to death, shaking. And the Afghans start, now they're riding by, and I'm just sitting there. And he said, Dostrom rides by and says something in maybe Russian. And he said, I didn't really know what he said. And I just said, oh, it won't happen again, General. It won't happen again. And finally, when interpreters come over, he says, do you know what he said? He says, no. He said, you're the finest horseman in all of Afghanistan. He's never seen anybody do that.
Wow.
And he said, my first time on a horse.
Wow.
So he signed a bottle of Horse Soldier bourbon for me, and then when they dropped supplies for them, they dropped them, with a parachute. And so he cut up the parachute and had little swatches of that he carried with him, the whole thing. He gave me a swatch from that. So those are things that are, valued things, keepsakes that I have in my office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
So meeting those guys, fun.
Yeah.
These guys, Texas Rangers,
Tell
making
me about this.
making that. So turns out one of my greatest friends is a Texas Ranger, Joe Espinoza with Company B. And so this is a gun that he carried. But it wasn't engraved. So I have a Ranger letter. Let's put that back in the right way. Okay, then you take it. You can do what you want to do with it.
Nice. Man, I appreciate this.
Yeah.
So much.
I'd like to thank the Academy but so it wasn't engraved, but he had those grips made for me. And so then I said, hey, what about getting this thing engraved? Because if you ever look at Texas Ranger, their guns are pretty intricate, like a works of art.
Yeah, I have my great-great-granddad's gun.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, it's a Colt as well.
Yeah. So Job carried that, so I have a letter from him saying, I, Job Espinoza, Company B, carried this Colt, serial number, in my everyday duties as a Texas Ranger protecting the citizens of the state of Texas. And so that obviously increases its value. You can take it out of there, but don't put that in it. It is not loaded, but you can rack it back. You can do whatever you want to do. Just don't point it at the boys.
Right.
Or at the governor. Keep it out of your lap.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to shoot the governor. So he sent me to a guy, and the guy did some engraving for it. It says Texas Rangers across the top of the slide. My initials are on it. And, it has a Ranger badge on one side, my initials on the other. So it's really just a work of art. And then they had the box made for me. And that wood where it has my name is from the Alamo.
Golly.
Wood from the Alamo. So that is another one of those things that hangs out in my office that is kind of a cool. But Pablo Escobar didn't have anything on me after. See that right there?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's impressive.
Yeah. So I like guns.
Yep.
Collect guns and knives and things. So I brought you a knife and I just showed you a gun.
And to show me a gun.
Yeah, showed you a gun.
We get views on the podcast, not 1911 views. Not quite yet.
Yeah. I know the Maddox girls like purses, really nice purses. And so that's where they're collecting. And they were having a conversation with Stan Redding, our VP over there at American Hat Company one day, and said, we're investing in purses, and we have a lot of good purses that'll go up in value over time. And they said, what are you doing investing in, Stan? And he said, I'm kind of like Keith. He said, I like guns and knives. And they're like, well, what is that going to do for you? And they're going to go up in value. And he said, well, maybe not. But he pulled his little knife out of there and he goes, let me have your purse. He said, that's what it's going to do for me. I said, I'll take that purse from you. He said, let me have that purse.
Yeah.
So we all got a laugh out of that.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
He's another great asset to our company. He's the hardest working guy I've ever met in my entire life.
Really?
Yeah. Just hard working. He's the hardest working guy in any room.
Dang.
So if something needs to be done, he just figures it out and gets it done. So he lives in Winsboro. So he's a few hours away from American Hat Company. And the deal was you didn't have to come to the office. You could do what he was going to do remotely. When we got so busy and everything, he comes Monday morning and shows up at American Hat Company and stays there Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then he's out on Thursday, and then we have every other Friday off. So, but he bought him a little trailer and parks it at the factory, stays in it during the week.
Gotcha. Life advice. Got any life advice?
Mm-hmm. This is Keith Maddox. I had it on the inside of my arm.
Oh, dang.
And it says, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much room. And the hat came in positive times. And
I like that.
What that means to me is if you're going to hang on to the trunk of the tree, you're going to die right there in your comfort zone. The fruit is out on the limb a little bit. And so you got to get out on the edges. You got to take some chances. There's some calculated risks involved. I'm not saying just walk out on the limb, but that's where the fruit's at. And so, again, if you're going to, if you're not living on the edge, you're flat taking up too much room.
Yes, sir.
So I've just adopted that kind of as a positive mindset to, I tell people all the time, cancer and complacency are both deadly. So if you get complacent, you will look back someday and somebody is take your lunch money.
I heard a guy say that an opportunity isn't called that before it happens. Before it happens, it's called risk. You talk about opportunities in a past tense.
And success is a situation where opportunity and hard work come together. If I could give my kids or my grandkids one gift, it would be the gift of self-discipline. If you have self-discipline, you can do anything you set your mind to.
Right.
Yep. You think about it. You can, if you, are going to be self-disciplined about reading or about working out or whatever it is, but self-discipline and consistency are the things that will equal success. So, there's a great book. It's called Atomic Habits, and that's what it's about. It's not doing a big thing, but doing a little thing over a long period of time will yield big results.
Yes, sir.
So you just you have to develop those positive habits and do them consistently over a long period of time, and you'll look back one day and you go, "Wow, I've come a long way."
Yes, sir.
So those are things that I like all of that mental stuff. I'm a fan of like Navy SEALs and
their culture,
their culture, their toughness, their mental strength. It's not their physical. They're not physically. They're obviously, because they're so mentally tough, they are in great shape. But it's not. They're not the biggest. They're not the whatever. But mentally, they just don't have quit. You have to kill one of them before they quit.
Right.
So I'm a fan of that mentality. Keith would often say, if you never quit, they can't beat you.
Right.
So look at you.
Yeah. I did learn that about sales. Like, no most often means not right now, provided when they do come back, you haven't quit yet.
Yeah, or I didn't give you all the information. I didn't tell you enough. I've got a great story of a lady that came to, I was at one of my dealers' booth in Las Vegas, and this lady come, and she was dressed to the nines, she had her makeup was done, her hair was done, her nails were done. She had the right jeans, the right boots, the right belt, right shirt, and they sold her a $178 wool hat. And, walked off. It wasn't one of our hats, but she walked off, and I said to the guy there, I said, "Man, when she figures out what you just did to her, she'll never buy nothing from you again." "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" I said, you just did her wrong. And he's like, "Oh, no, that's, so whatever." We went on and talked about some other stuff. And it was maybe 20 minutes later, here she come back, and she said, "Hey, can you touch this hat up? It's, drooping on one side." And I don't know if he thought he was going to throw me into the bus or if I don't know what he was doing, but he said, "Hey, let me introduce you to this guy. He's the president of American Hat Company." And she said, "Oh, is this your hat?" And I said, No, ma'am, it's not at my hat." She goes, "Well, what do you think? Do you like it?" And I said, and now I'm stuck. What am I going to do? So I reached in my pocket, had a little money clip. I said, "I'll give you $178 not to wear it." And she said, "Why would you do that?" And I said, "Well, I pay attention to details, and you have the right boots, you got the right jeans. I know what the belt cost, great shirt, your nails are done, your makeup's done right, your hair's done right, so you care how you look, and you topped it all off with the cheapest hat you could possibly find. It doesn't fit, doesn't go. That's the one thing, don't go." And she said, "Well, I don't know the difference, show me." And so I show her like a 10X, and she goes, "Oh, yeah, that does feel better." And then I went to we had 20s at the time, 20X. "Well, like that, how much is that?" Give her a price. 40. Ooh, I really like that one. That's really good. Then we got to 100. And she said, oh, I really like this. So she goes, is there more? Yeah, 200. Oh, getting better. 500. Pure belly beaver. Oh my gosh, I love this. I love this. And then there wasn't a 1000X there, but I had one on my head. And I said, and then this is the last 1000X. It's belly beaver with mink blended into it. And I always do a little shtick with that where I say, you're never, ever supposed to lay your hat on the bed. Never, ever. But I said, when I go to sleep at night, I just lay it right there on my chest and I just rub it like that. And it puts me right to sleep. That's how I go. So, a little tongue in cheek, but make them laugh, instead of being focused on, the $4,000 price tag. She just told me, I can't do that. She said, my husband will kill me. But how much for this one? And it was like a couple $1,000. She said, well, I'll take that one. She said, will they take the other one back? I said, well, if they won't, I will. And so she then gets a 500X shaped up. And I said, no, that fits with what you got going on. And she said, they just didn't tell me the whole story. I didn't know. I didn't know. And off she went. And I stand there kind of uncomfortable looking around, whatever. And I go, told you so. And he goes, I wouldn't have believed it had I not seen it with my own eyes.
Dang.
But you got to tell the whole story.
Yep.
You have to inform them. Let them make the decision. Mm-hmm. You can't push or lobby for one thing or another. They'll tell you and how they react to you about, I can do this, or I can't do that, or I want to be right here. And so then you got to fill the void, fit their need. What do they want? What can they afford? Not everybody's going to spend that money on a hat. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. Dang.
If you tell them the whole story, they can make the decision.
Well,
we have a tendency to prejudge and think everybody wants to be the cheapest. The price you paid is long forgotten when the quality's not there. Mm-hmm. When you found something, you go, "Oh, this thing fell apart." How much did you save? I might have saved $20, but it didn't last.
Right.
So I'd rather spend a little more money and get the right thing.
Yeah.
Quality.
Joke's on y'all. I'd have paid more.
Yeah. 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 So it's just, it is what it is. So.
Well, thanks for joining us here.
You bet.
In the warehouse. How long have we been talking, Cole? Oh, nice. Yeah, you guys check out American Hat. If you don't wear an American, you ain't no cowboy, and you're dang sure not an American.
Well, if it's not an American, it's un-American.
It's un-American.
Tongue in cheek.
Yep. Yeah, there's some guys I run around with at some of these booths, and I give them a hard time. They work for a different hat company.
Yeah.
And
no big deal.
Yeah, I used to wear one of those. Yeah. And then my mom got a job.
Yeah. and I'm not competing with any other hat company, right. To be honest with you. I'm competing with ourselves.
For sure.
We're just trying to be better than we were yesterday.
Yeah.
Coach Baxter, you met Coach Baxter.
Oh, yeah.
Another influence in my life. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until the good is better and the better's best.
There you go.
So that's his philosophy. That's our philosophy. And, they're not my competitor. I'm competing with myself.
You bet.
Not anybody else.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
I don't run anybody down.
Yeah. Well, y'all check out rodeotime.com. We do have some hats there, some straw hats. Mm-hmm. What's the number on it? It's the most popular American hat that. What's that number hat?
The Dale Brisby. 1011 is probably the most popular. You have some 1011.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. That's what Stan told me at least.
Yeah, it is.
So, and then I've also got the tall crown.
Yeah.
But yeah, check out an American hat. Check out rodeotime.com. Thank you, Keith, for coming on.
Thanks for
having
me.
On to the next one.
Thanks for I'll
ranch fuel.
Leave you some money.
Thanks for the gun.
Yeah, you're welcome.